Good morning. It's Monday. Mm. Welcome to Collision Coffee Talk. It's gonna be a fun one. Um, Not a lot happened this week again in the news. That's too terribly, oh my God, we gotta dig in. But some fun things that I want to talk about that are happening around the world and around our industry that could be interesting to you. Let's hope they're interesting to you. I got to get a little bit more caffeine in my system this morning, get a few more things going. It is a big weekend. I became a new great aunt. Yeah. All right. We're going to start with a mental health check-in. I had a really interesting conversation with a shop at the end of last week, and I just kind of want to like expand on that a little bit and kind of chat about a few things. We're going to talk about my open challenge. We're going on I think we did some counting. I think we're on year 26 of the challenge, and I'm still undefeated. So we're going to just talk about that some more. What is involved in the challenge? Some consumers and blending and education. I did get a note from a shop as well last week that Allstate had sent out a notice to all the shops in their territory in the West Coast about what they were no longer paying for in the world of blends and their expectations of clear blending and some things that they wanted to have all of their DRP shops do. So some definite education there. Wilber got a new neighbor. We're going to talk about old Wilber's new neighbor there. A couple other things. SATA is celebrating 100 years, so we're going to wish SATA sort of a happy birthday and explain to you some of the things that they got going on this year that you do not want to miss. Tesla cars are not the only thing flaming up right now. We'll talk a little bit more about Tesla certified collision repair, and how they continue to just amaze me with the boundaries they're pushing. And God, I hope someone sues them soon. We are not alone. Other associations are starting to talk about their troubles with insurance companies. I chuckled at this one, and I hope that you do too when I put it up, and that you guys will rush to LinkedIn to follow this guy and play along. Um, we're going to talk about the trend of negative equity, what that is, and why it sort of should concern us as shops, what we can and can't do around that trend. Progressive is reporting a 34% net profit increase. I thought you guys were making them go bankrupt with the way you were writing estimates and totaling cars and doing all of those things. But yet, record profits year over year continue to get posted. We're going to talk about market conduct studies and right to appraisals, and then getting an A. What is it? Do you really want to get an A, or maybe we at the time in the life want an F? An F might be a better grade than an A. And we'll talk about what all that means. So let's start by just a little quick check-in, because I had this conversation toward the end of the week with a shop, independent shop owner, multiple generations, and man, is it tough. I don't think there's anybody right now that's going to say that this is the most peachy time that they've ever had in the collision repair business. But it's just tough. And I think for shop owners specifically, if you are a multi generation, um, just multi-generational shop, especially if there's multiple siblings or anything else involved, man, is there a lot of pressure in running that business and not being the one that didn't make it, right? If we're on the third, fourth generation of this shop, supplying and feeding the family and multiple members of the family, et cetera, and then it's, we're where we are now, that just sort of compounds it, right? You don't want to be the one that ends the family legacy. So as we talk through a lot of these problems that were going on, but this was just a really interesting moment. And I loved that little quote about we teach throughout our negotiation training, we teach be water, right? Like there's nothing right now temper tantrums will get you. And trust me, I'm real good at throwing temper tantrums. I'm real good at starting them in some places and then walking away and watching how that just sort of catches on fire and burns. It's sometimes an effective negotiation strategy. Like there's some art to throwing a tantrum in certain places and at certain times. But with shops, that's just it's not going to be beneficial. So, we always teach the be water thing. And it was an interesting take on how you have to be so I guess controlled in how on what you say and do when you're at work. that's the reason why I work for myself is that I'm HR and the boss. Like there, you want to complain about me, you're just going to end up complaining to me, right? But and so it works well for me. But in corporate America, I remember how that was. Like there's the things you always wanted to say, you couldn't say. There's the reactions you wanted to have that you couldn't have. So you feel like you're having to be like mom, dad, grandparent to coworkers, employees, consumers. You're dealing with all these insurance companies and adjusters and enterprise and all this stuff. So you spend all day sort of not expressing yourself the way you would like to the people that are causing you the most frustration. But then you take that home, and then what's the side of that? So we talked a lot about putting it down. Like what's your ritual going to be for how you put it down? So when the day's over and it's time to go home, what are you going to do that turns it off? And that means that you may have to stay off social media, because if you've joined all these Facebook groups, or you've friended all of these people in the industry, just even being on social media could be a trigger, right? You see what people are posting, whether those are videos of bad repairs or whatever. So, you may have to get home and go, no social after 6 p.m. or whatever that is. And we talked about a sort of a go home ritual, right? Where you're going to get in your car and you're going to drive home. And so in that time period between when you walk to your car at the shop till you get to your front door at the house, what does that need to be? And so what do we do to make sure that you never take it home? So never take this business home. And that's really hard when it's a family business. Um, it's we live this. That's what my dad used to always say, is that this isn't a job for him, this is who he is. Whereas an adjuster, it's just my job, right? I go to that job 9 to 5, and then when I'm done I can go be whatever or whoever I want to be. But when you're in this business and you're an owner and you're an entrepreneur and this is what you are, you eat, sleep, and breathe this. This is more than a job. This is you. And my dad had that famous fight with an Allstate adjuster when I think I was 10 years old, and they're arguing over like 50 cents. And my dad's like, that's lunches. Like that's a couple of lunch, that's a couple boxes of milk for her at at lunch or whatever. So 50 cents, nothing to you, everything to me. And that stuck with me. But I think a lot of us have to learn how to put this down. Like we're not going to fix it. We're probably more messed up than we've ever been. And I think about when I got into this business in 94 full time. I was born into it, but like I joined the corporate America world in 94. Um, and it was a mess then. And I used to listen to all the old timers tell me how terrible it was and it will never be the same. And I was like, whatever, I got this. And then now I go, oh my God, it's terrible. It'll never be the same. Um, Change is the only thing that stays the same. So so figuring out ways to put it down. So I would say over this next week, for those of you really at that wit's end of, is this worth it? Do I walk away? I could make more money as a greeter at Walmart sometimes, and feel more stable. Find ways to just put this down and not take it home. Those times at home are, it's sort of, we don't get all that. We're not promised all of those. So definitely make sure that you take advantage of them. So that's my mental health check-in for this week, because I think the rest of this year is just going to keep getting crazier for a lot of people, especially body shops. It's going to keep getting crazier. So figure out a way to separate that home and work, and keep home sacred. All right. Well, happy birthday, SATA. SATA is celebrating 100 years into the paint gun, refinish, and atomization. I had a chance a couple of years ago to go over to Germany with SATA and spend some time at the plant. I got to spend a week and go through some training and go through the plant and watch them make guns and do all that. And it was super cool to be over there. It was super cool to learn about the history, and how much better they were at painting cars than we were a whole long sooner before we figured out what tools to use. And shout out to Knud and Bent Jorgensen and their dad for bringing SATA over here to the United States all those years ago. But SATA celebrating 100 years. The first real paint gun for them was 1925. And so they're going to have a anniversary 100-year edition of the new Jet X. I've got my 5000 back here behind me on the shelf. But I have had a chance to spray the new Jet X. It is completely different. For the first time, really, it's completely different. When we went, I always used to say that my favorite gun ever, and Tony Larimer and the guys at SATA used to yell at me. My favorite gun ever was the SATA 3000. I loved that gun. And then the 4000 came out, and there were some minor changes. And I think from the 4000 to the 5500, the changes haven't felt huge to me, although you can tell a difference when you're painting. And I would still go, it's nice, but I like my 3000, right? And they would be like, you can't say that. Stop saying that you love your 3000. It's like, I love it. But the Jet X really is a completely different, for what I feel is the first time, like a completely different spray gun, new design, it's more than just the body that looks a little different. It still looks, when you still see this body, you still see the very traditional SATA gun. But there's a lot of changes there. We were very fortunate to get to introduce this gun to the United States. You've seen some of the videos probably online. SATA invited a bunch of painters from across the country, some awesome people. We had Casey, and we had Jonathan Goolsby, and we had Miguel and Connie. We had Paddocks was here, Paddocks Refinishing, just some great painters that spent the week here. And we unboxed all the guns. We sent them in the paint booth, and we just let them have at it. And even they were, again, I'm gonna sell Casey out. Casey agrees with me, like the SATA 3000 was our baby. But this is a completely new, revolutionized way of atomization and the way the gun is built, and cleaning and maintenance and upkeep, and just everything. So if you have a painter in your life that you want to get a gift for, if you're an owner and you want to give your painter or your employee something nice, these will go for sale. I believe the second week of September is when you can get them in the United States. So I'm pre telling you. I'm gonna get in trouble for telling you this soon, but they started putting it out on LinkedIn. So I saw it on LinkedIn. So I'm feeling, hey, if there's a post on LinkedIn, even though it's the Canadians, then it's, you guys aren't dumb. You use the internet, you know what's out there. So great gun. Can't say enough about it. Definitely. Right now, I only get to use it when I visit the paint companies because I haven't bought one yet. But I may have to get this one. This one may be the one that I have very few guns in my collection. This one may end up in my collection. So, all right, let's get to the meat. We've covered my community service announcement for mental health, and happy birthday to SATA. Let's get right into some things that are a little bit more meat and potato-ish this morning. All right, so last week we talked a little bit about kind of how the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, their market regulation book, what market regulation sort of does. And I had a lot of calls. Well, not this last week. I've had a lot of calls for 2025 continuously. I did have one call last week that took an entire day. It was like a 5-hour conference call where we talked about from an insurer and their team about right to appraisals and sort of the exposures and potentials and handling them, and what to do. So the insurers aren't, like we talked about, there was this change in claims. There's this group of they're just processors. And that's really how they always got referred to, as not claims adjusters, but as auto processors. Claims get turned in, you go to a body shop, you chop an estimate down, you make a claim payment, done, right? There's not a whole lot of coverage investigation and questioning and all the stuff that goes into auto claims. And now we have a policy benefit that's being invoked. And where does that go? Obviously, my suggestion is that those need to go back to the complex claims adjusters, the people that are versed in policy and have a little policy experience, and they've studied a little claims law, and they kind of understand the bigger picture than just the people that are making $14 an hour working shift works processing auto claims. But in the conversation that came up is, what are we learning from right to appraisals, and is that creating a market conduct behavior problem? So you've heard us talk in the last couple of years that if your consumer has to do a right to appraisal, it is best to have two insurance commissioner complaints. Complaint one is, this is so unfair that I'm having to do this and spend money to get compensated correctly. And then complaint two is when you come back and go, look how much I was compensated. Look how much I would have been shorted if I had just accepted what they wanted to pay or had gone to their DRP facility. Because you got to remember, folks, direct repair claims within the DRP channel will not go to right to appraisal. And if I'm pushing 40% or more of reported claims through a DRP channel, the window for which these cases can happen or exist gets smaller and smaller. So what's a sampling? What's good consumer data? How or why do we use those reports? Well, at some point, we don't want to have to RTA everything. You would like to get to a point where there's a lesson learned, like we learn in court. There's a lesson learned, and it changes the way that things are done for all consumers. So there's a debate right now in Texas. So it's been made very clear. DRP shops in Texas for one particular insurance company is being paid $9 more an hour than the non-DRPs. How is that fair to the policyholders of Texas, particularly if you're a mutual automobile insurance company? Why is the rate different? Like procedures and rate specifically, if you're going to set the market, then that's the market. So why do DRP shops get $9 more an hour than the non-DRP shops? I think all of us would go, wouldn't that be reversed? Wouldn't the non-DRP shops get more? And then wouldn't the DRP shops have agreed to do it for less or whatever? So it's almost, I always say it's like Willy Wonka's upside down land, or was it DC Comics Bizarro World or whatever? I feel like we're there, but there's sort of an answer for that for us. If you are a nerd like me and you want to read the handbook from the insurance commissioners, the Association of Insurance Commissioners, for how we do market conduct studies, there was a time, a very short, I won't say a short period of my career, that I did have to be the one that responded to insurance company complaints. And that's when I learned that it was bigger than just Miss Smith doesn't like what we offered to pay for her total loss. Because I'm like, well, why is this a big deal? It just basically most complaints are people bitching because they didn't like their settlement. True, but if we don't respond to them properly, if we don't handle it in the right way, and not just a time limit restraint, because sometimes you get told you got 14 days to respond to this, whatever. I could expose the company to a larger issue, a market conduct study, and that could come with fines. So, US shops, I really think you ought to read this, not because you're not going to handle claims, right? We're going to talk about that a little later. But just knowing what's going on around you and how this works sometimes makes you think better in that critical thinking world. So if we get to page 95, 94, it tells you what your tools are for a market analysis. So I wanted to know when it was my job to respond to insurance commissioner complaints, what the process would be if an investigation was going to happen and what some of their guidelines were, because that was going to help me determine how I wrote. In other words, in debate, if you ever take a debate class, knowing what the other side's arguments are going to be helps you prepare what your pros and cons of a debate, right? I got to really think about my competitor, the other side of this argument, so that I can prepare the proper monologue, which is really what debate was. I gotta write the best monologue I can to get my way. So when we go into how market analysis is done for a market conduct study, one of the first things that you see there is the use of complaint data in your market analysis. Those complaints that your consumers are either filing or not filing, not you, because when I go to look at so over here on the right of the screen, you'll see that, some of the things that you have to think about when you're looking at data, complaint data, and some of it is there's usually not a lot of sufficient numbers. We like to see things in bunches in complaints, but that doesn't mean that 2 or 3 really good written complaints couldn't start an investigation. That's what they used to always tell me, Kristen, don't ever dismiss a complaint, right? Take them all seriously, write your response, do your file research. Because I would get to the point where I'm like, why am I doing this? They just don't like their total loss value. Yeah, we did a market survey. That's what we offered to pay. I would be very overconfident in how I wanted to respond to those. And thankfully, I had these great managers in my life that would go, let me explain to you why you're not going to do that and what the consequences are if you do that. And I would go, okay, that makes sense. Yep, not doing that. I'm going to go pull the file and really quick look at the whole file. Because it's like they used to tell me, Kristen, they may have complained about one thing, and that may be the one thing we did right, but the whole rest of the file is a mess, and you don't want it reopened. That's a very good point, right? It's kind of like a post-repair inspection. The paint might match, but what's under that paint is what you don't want me to see, right? Mm. So if we do these and we think about complaints, um, I love little point three. Conversely, the customer might not always be right. Oh shit, right? That sometimes can be day, but we have to sort of look at it and peel it back on our investigation. I love this line where it's like, it could also be the result of an unrealistic expectation on the part of the consumer. To address this concern, confirmed complaints should be distinguished from other consumer complaints. So we got to find the good complaints and probably maybe a sea of bad complaints. This happens a lot in health insurance more than it does in auto, but we never just write in and go, I don't like what they offered to settle me, or I don't like what they offered to repair my car with. There has to be some more details. Now, if those complaints are written appropriately and you have enough of them, you should be able to show a market tendency. So in other words, let's go back to our conversation with our insurer. If we've had 20 RTAs come out of the same market, and all 20 of those RTAs have determined that you owe, let's just say blending or paint materials, right? All 20 of those RTAs, paint and materials has been included in the RTA that has resulted in a higher settlement for the customer. If your IA that's working for your consumer and there's a conversation that's going on, then it might make sense when I'm filing my complaint to go, please see 19 previous complaints in which same items were denied by insurer that the consumer had to seek right to appraisal to get paid. What we're trying to do is show that there's a tendency to underpay the claim. Not a tendency, there's an intent to underpay the claim. We don't pay for it over here, but we always pay for it when over here when we're told to. If after 18, 20 times, something is always being covered or applied or seen as needed within the RTA process, but that insurer still refuses to pay for it, then what about all the consumers in the market that didn't know they should have complained? Were their cars not fixed properly? Were they not properly compensated for their loss? If we just look at the strict, reimbursement aspect of loss and a policy. But these complaints become key. And I know they don't feel like that a lot of times. I always see shops online go, it doesn't matter. Complaining is a waste of time. Nobody's going to do anything. And the first 500, maybe they don't do anything. But it's real important that consumers share that experience, voice what happened to them, be very specific about things that were initially said, no, we're not paying for, that came back and were paid for in the RTA. And when patterns start to emerge, then bring that to the Department of Insurance's attention. We should, if RTA does its job appropriately, then we shouldn't have to do the same job over and over. We shouldn't be discussing the same common non-included items. We may still have to have some procedure debates or whatever, but at some point, the purpose of the RTA should be to elevate or get a better magnifying glass on what's owed. It shouldn't be just a one-off every time. We shouldn't look at it that way. And that's up to consumers, because we're not attorneys and we can't step over those lines as body shops. But we can't float the boats if no one's calling that message to task. We'll go back to Texas. With working with Consumer Watch and some things, they tracked and said, here's how much the average RTA increased and whatever, but we got to get kind of a little granular in that. These are the things that are always denied, that the consumer then is always paid for in the RTA. That becomes a market conduct. That becomes a willful and wanton denial of reimbursement. You know you owe it. You just don't want to pay it, and you're waiting to see if somebody's going to raise their hand before you pay it. That's not how insurance is supposed to work. I know there's a lot of people on the other side of the fence these days and insurance companies that thinks that's the way it's supposed to work, right? Like we don't owe it until you ask for it. Nope, that's it's not how insurance works, and that's typically not how juries see it either. So that can be a very damaging, financially damaging position to take. The good news is, I'll just say it's good news. At the corporate level, you have a lot of insurance companies recognizing that this is an issue. They don't want to get into a bad, like, let's just say, a huge bad faith, multi-state, sort of issue. They want to try to do the right thing. They're struggling to try to figure out who do they hire to represent them in these. And a lot of times when you hire an IA, they think that to get more work, they have to make the insurer happy. And they think making the insurer happy means saying no to everything, like trying to hold severity down. And it's really interesting when the insurer's trying to do something. I don't want to say trying to do something different, but they're worried and they're open to conversations, and we keep having these conversations with them. But that's from that perspective, that's what we talk about. Like we read that market regulation handbook at corporate, and we are aware of what the other side of that fence looks like if we don't do complaints the right way, if we don't handle coverages the right way. Like there's a cliff. We talked last week about the boogeyman when we were talking about the that video with the author of Delay to Not Offend. The role that litigation plays in regulation, right? Like I'm afraid of large lawsuits and their verdicts, those nuclear verdicts, and so I behave better. It's like I'm afraid of cops and going to jail, so I behave better, so to speak. Um, so it's just some things to think about. I really, when I look across RTAs, and there's still not a lot. There's still less than 2% of claims, but they're picking up. Sometimes they're picking up in states because of regulations that changed. Um, there needs to be a complaint that goes with them. Just doing the RTA doesn't necessarily make things better. As I set through strategy and discussion, obviously everyone's very aware that DRP claims don't have this potential. So the more claims that I can shove into that program, the less likely I am to have to deal with RTAs. And for those shops that are independent, non-DRP, that's not necessarily good news. So RTA is a tool that you could use because you're not part of a DRP. You could use it to ensure or assist with the consumer getting paid to properly fix their car. If this, and I hate to call it steering, but like if I was back at sitting in a chair, of course I want all my claims that I can get to go through my DRP program. So being very aware of that and what's happening and understanding Department of Insurance complaints. Now we've got a class on Department of Insurance complaints. It's on the website in the shop. I think you go into legal and regulation. There's a class in there, and we talk about. There's a multifaceted. I think there's two classes on Department of Insurance complaints. Just really understanding them. I see so many shops that are like, "Well, I filed a complaint." Cute. But if we go back to that page where it says, you got to sort through real complaints and unreal complaints, a body shop complaining to the Department of Regulations is generally like, okay, you're just mad because you can get paid. Those consumer complaints carry more weight. And so however we work to do that. All right, let's talk about the next thing. So I got a bunch of calls because Allstate had apparently on the West Coast over there sent out some emails around what they're not paying for blending anymore, and they're demanding shops basically burn clear coat in, and they're putting it all in writing, and everybody was sort of up in arms, and people started writing me and going, Kristen, do you have an educational video that we can share with customers on blending? And the answer is no. And then they go, can you make one? And I go, no. And the reason why isn't a bad one, but there's a guy that has a YouTube channel called the Refinish Network. His name's Justin Jimmo. I haven't seen Justin online in a while. So he was a painter at a fix in Canada, and he had this YouTube channel, and he would make really great videos. Well, he made this one called Why Do You Need to Blend Color? And he did a fantastic job. And since then, I haven't really sensed a need to make another video. I'm gonna play a short segment of this for you guys so that you can see it. Now, Obviously, it's on YouTube and he monetized it, so I'm going to need to fast forward through the commercial as soon as it lets me. I can't control what commercial is going to pop up, so there's that. But I want to give you guys a chance to hear this little video. You'll be able to, you can go to Refinish Network is the name of the YouTube channel, and the name of the video is Why Do You Need to Blend Color? You guys can find this link and share it with your customers. Let's give Jimmo a listen here.
Harbor Freight tools keep getting better with time.
Harbor Freight commercial.
Better performance, better.
Identical, but that is not the case. Let's look at a few reasons as to why. Color matching across industries, including both paint and print, can struggle to match a color because of how pigments are affected by temperature and humidity. The same batch of paint, if allowed to dry at a different rate, may not necessarily produce the same color. When it comes to automotive paint, the problem is compounded by the addition of aluminum metallics and effect pearls, which will reflect differently based on how they are orientated. If paint is applied a bit wetter, metallic colors will settle differently and give off a darker look. Unless you can apply paint using the exact same formula, equipment, pressure settings.
All right. It's a 3-minute video. And you can see the sort of the detail that Justin went in. This video is 8 years old. When he really explained it's not color. And I think that's when I was training adjusters all the time, that's the hardest thing for them. You hear white is white, black is black. And it's not color. Like if it was just mixing color, that'd be the easiest part, right? Like we have the spectro phenomena or denominator guns that now that we can read color with if we buff the panel accordingly in the right spot. That makes this a little bit better than it used to be, where it was just mix something, put up some tint cards, spray a bunch of spray outs, and figure out what's the closest blendable match we can get to. But color is difficult, and it's not the exotic colors. It's not, I mean, pearls and all that stuff has always been a little harder, but a black or a white or a blue or all of these things can be a problem with all of these environmental considerations. Is the paint too wet? Is it too dry? Is it too humid? Is it too hot? Is it what's the pressure in the booth? What's all of these things that you have to take care of? And Justin, he covered all of that in this 3-minute video. And so it's 8 years old, and I still haven't figured out the need to have to make anything different, because I think he did just such a good job with that. I got a couple. Where you go? I got a couple questions last week about it, and go, do you have a video or something we share with the customers? And I was like, no. And I shared Justin's video with them and said, I always send this one. So I wanted to share that with y'all. You can go on YouTube and find it, save the link, so that you'll have it when this comes up. You may want to put it on a nonstop loop in your lobby playing these days. For a long time, I had a playlist. I think it's still available. I think you can go to the Collision Hub YouTube channel and look at playlist and go down and you'll find it. I called it the consumer playlist. And it was a collection of videos from all over YouTube that were really good. Ended up being 6 hours long. And I was like, just play this on loop in your lobby. That way, if you're going to have them sitting there, please don't have them watching Judge Judy. I mean, let's at least have them watch something that maybe, helps them understand. I would probably completely redo that list today to include more ADAS and some other things in it. So anyway, Justin Jimmos, if you're looking to explain blending, I've sent that video to adjusters in the past when I've tried to explain, hey, it's not just color. One of the other things I started doing a couple years ago when I had to is I would get the paint code and I would see how many toners that were in it, and we'd do drops. So we'd take a little, piece of aluminum and we'd drop each color on there until it dried. And then we'd go, look, there are 6 toners that make up this white, and you see it, and there's blacks and blues and silvers and, whatever. And it's like, white isn't white. And that was a really good visual to see all the different toner colors that are involved in a paint mix. I think when people see yellow and a white, they're like, what? But that was really good. And I would leave a couple of those in the lobby for different colors, particularly blacks and whites, because that's what you're always going to hear people say. It's just black or it's just a white, or whatever. So we would leave those daubers out there with just little drops of paint. Daniel, who leads our Refinish 20 group, Daniel and Jim, had shared some of those, and it just works out really, really good. So sometimes I send those to adjusters even. So just keep that. All right, let's talk about the challenge. I got into a discussion. Yeah. Let's call it a discussion instead of an argument. And this always happens. Whether we're talking about flat rate, whether we're talking about DRPs, it always happens that someone's going to come on and go, you shouldn't generalize. There are good DRPs out there. And I go, no. There's, I mean, like I got a lot of years, right? 94 until now, out re-inspecting shops. And to date, so from 1994 to 2025, I have never found a DRP shop that is fixing cars correctly. I just haven't. I've never found a shop that has people getting paid by flat rate that's fixing cars correctly either. I am 100% open to be proven wrong. So we're eight. I think Larry added it up. We're 18 years into this challenge. So everybody that comes on and goes, you shouldn't do that. We're a good shop. We follow whatever. Great. Tell me when I can come visit you. And then I get crickets. Like I'm want to be proved wrong. I always think I have a nice different level of experience than a lot of people. I've been all 50 states, Canada, Mexico, Europe. I've looked at body shops all over the world. I've looked at body shops all over the United States of all different levels, whether they're the huge multi-million dollar facilities that everybody brags about, or they're the behind the barn, shops that some guys got a hobby shop in. I've been to them all. So I'm willing to be wrong. And I just want to keep throwing this out there because I got into this debate with an OE recently. Because we have the best shops, we have the best OE program. No, you don't, because you're full of DRPs. So you don't have the best shops, and I don't believe that you are repairing vehicles correctly for the consumer. And I believe by allowing those shops to be on your program, it's actually false advertising to the consumer. Like, I'm okay if you're an OE and you want to have a certified collision program, it just should mean something, right? You should say no alternative parts are allowed. You should not be allowed to do concessions or not do things. When we talk about, State Farm's announcement of not doing the safety inspections, and your estimator should do all the seat belts, and just the crazy things that come out of their mouths over there. But anyway, I just want to keep making that public. If you're listening to this and you are an insurer, you need to be afraid that in my years, no shop has ever passed. So you don't have a shop on your program that can do correct repairs, but you're using that program as a weapon against other shops. Probably not smart for what may happen in litigation. And then OEs, if you're listening to this, I've never seen it. So you're referring shops, particularly General Motors. I was having a debate about them last week. You're going to refer customers directly from an app or a crash incident to a shop that's probably not going to fix their car right. I mean, like, probably not. So, how's that going to work when the customer comes back and says, well, we only went there because we got a pop-up on our app that said we should go here because these people were certified. Like, at that point, you're part of the claim process. You stuck your nose in there, so to speak. I don't think it's going to go well. But if you are a shop and you are a DRP, or you pay your technicians by flat rate or whatever, and you think you're fixing cars correctly, I will come see you. Please prove me wrong. I will make a video that says, there's probably about 10 years ago, I was wrong about stat gun and the use of anti-stat guns in refinish. And I thought that's just a bunch of crap, somebody trying to sell you a part. I got my anti-stat wipes and I spray a little water on the floor, right? All the traditionals, I'm good. And then I took the testing. And I was wrong. Like, stat guns, they save me money and they make the paint match better. That orientation thing that Justin Jimmo was talking about, I was completely wrong. And so I made an apology video for ProStat, and then made them a bunch of videos to say I'm sorry. So I think I made them 15 or 20 something videos that explain stat gun. So that's my way of saying I'm sorry. I'll do it again. with I will go to whatever shop and I will claim that you are the one shop that I missed in all of my years of traveling, and you actually do it right. So we'll see out there. The fact that I'm 18 years into this and we still don't have a shop that's passed it. Look, I'm not a genius and I'm not a repair expert. I have Larry and I have all these other people that are the experts that go and look and tell me yes or no, and debate back and forth. But the fact that we're this far along and no one's No one's taken the challenge and no one's proved it. I just want to, I'm okay if you're not going to do things as long as you're explaining to the customer what you're not going to do. So if you're going to be a DRP and you're not going to write certain things, charge for things, do things a certain way, follow all of the OE procedures because X insurance company isn't going to pay for them, and you've made a business decision to do business with X insurance company. Great. Did you explain to the vehicle owner everything you were not going to do? So I'm sure you showed them an estimate and said, here's what we are going to do, but did you tell them what you aren't going to do? And that's really the key, specifically in litigation. And a lot of it, as this litigation ticks up around ADAS, which we now know is, I mean, every month there's multiple of those cases being filed. It really comes down to, what did you tell them about what you aren't going to do? Like, and did you disclose this and that? And did they have a chance to make a different opinion? Did they have a chance to pay for it out of their pocket if they wanted to? So, my challenge still exists. I want to make it more open and public besides just comments here and there on Facebook. I'm okay with being wrong. That would probably be the best day ever for me to be wrong, because I would go, okay, well, at least some consumers are safe, right? Like maybe not all of them, but at least some consumers are safe. All right. Well, Wilber has a new neighbor in Bloomington, Illinois. So Wilber is a debt collection sort of subrogation agency. Some of you in this industry have gotten some love letters from Wilber or some phone calls where closed claims, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, insurance companies are sending them to Wilber and trying to collect against body shops for towing and storage and total loss fees or whatever. And the way it's presented, it's not like we think we overpaid. It's sort of like it's almost presented like it's a liability. You owe this, and you need to set up payment plans or whatever. We've talked frequently over the last couple of years that if you get these notices, you cannot just ignore them. You can't wad them up and throw them in the trash. You do actually need to make a response, not a phone call. That's not a response. They're not going to put on the record that they talked to you and you said you don't owe it or whatever. So make sure that if you get a love note from Wilber, that you definitely respond to it in writing. I recommend certified mail. I also recommend that you have your business attorney respond back to them just so that you can shut that down. We're still debating back and forth whether they're going to try to write this off as bad debt. Since Wilber is a collection agency, there was a change in the tax law that a debt can be written off as a bad debt to the IRS. And once it's written off, the IRS comes back to you and says that because you didn't pay your debt, it's unaccounted income, that you got to have the benefit of not paying the debt. So all that money you didn't pay, you need to pay taxes on. And then when you try to tell the IRS you don't owe it, they go, well, you got to go back to the company that wrote this debt off and you got to get them to tell us that you don't owe it. And that becomes problematic. Like getting an attorney to go back and fight this is typically more than what the debt is, so to speak. So it's like, I might as well just pay the taxes. There may be other benefits, or not benefits, I'm sorry, that's the wrong word. There may be other penalties for that may affect your credit score, your business's ability to get a business loan. So even if you went and said, fine, it's $2,500. It cost me more to get my business attorney involved. I'm just going to pay the taxes on the $2,500. And that seems simple, but there may be some other effects. If you don't have a paper trail where you can show that you told Wilber no, that this is not a debt, this is not a whatever, you better come to me with some whatever. And Wilber just says, here are all the times we attempted to contact these people. They never responded by mail. They never responded by phone. They never did anything. So after a certain period of time, we wrote this debt off. I believe that's what I think the insurers are kind of looking at it as subrogation and write-off, so to speak. You can write off bad debts, probably talk to your business attorney and have them, or your CPA or your accountant, and have them walk through. Them putting a new office in Bloomington, Illinois, makes me wonder if I think most of us have seen letters from like was it like Safeco was using Wilber a lot, and I think Liberty Mutual was using Wilber a lot. So now maybe State Farm is going to start using Wilber a lot, and is trying that strategy. If Wilber thinks it's working, then they're going to go back to the other insurers and go, look, here's what we're doing for these other insurance companies, and this is the success we've had, and this is what's been written off over the last whatever. So please, 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 please do not ignore when you get either a phone call from Wilber or you get a letter in the mail from Wilber, because there may be some consequences to that. And they're growing. So in a world where the economy's bad right now, Wilbur sure is building a lot of new offices everywhere. So I guess whatever they've promised the insurers around dealing with body, probably not just body shops, they handle lots of sub-road debt, etc. Whatever they've promised, um, must be doing well. I also told people a couple years ago, Wilbur does have in-house attorneys. So sometimes debt collection agencies are just phone call trees, so to speak. Wilbur has in-house attorneys. They tend, like the filings that need to be done, they'll actually do those. So please, please, please be very, very, very careful. New sets of Tesla fires. Damn. Um, uh, I think every time I turn on the news lately, there's a Tesla in flames. And I know people are like, that doesn't mean they're bad cars. Gasoline cars catch on fire all the time. And I go, sure they do. But if we look at the percent of gasoline cars on the road to the percent of EVs on the road, and then we look at fires, it feels like per vehicles enforced on the road, there seems to be a greater risk of fire to these Teslas, in particular, right? So we had downtown Memphis, we had a big flame out Tesla on the side of the road. And then we had the semi truck that was carrying the Teslas last week block up the freeway for a while. But that's not the only thing flaming out around Tesla. Their collision repair program continues to make a lot of questionable decisions. We still have shops that are being removed from the program. I'm getting a lot of call recordings. Tesla calls the shop, and I guess they missed that part where it says all calls will be recorded. but but it's just very interesting what they think they have control over, and what they're doing, to shops and their estimates, and trying to control severity of what shops are charging to do the repairs properly to these vehicles. And it's very clear the people making those decisions aren't very versed in collision repair. We keep continuing to hear, I'll have to take it back to the team. So at some point, I'm hoping somebody sues on this as well. Tesla had a suit last year. Body shops got subpoenas to turn over a bunch of information. The law firm was out of Texas, and it was a lawsuit around, is it unfair for how Teslas have to be serviced, and kind of constricting the market for where you can get your Tesla repaired and who can buy parts or whatever. And then we saw where that suit got dismissed. But I think we're going to see some more Tesla suits here pretty soon, and fires. But yeah, I really dislike Tesla. So anytime they're going to catch on fire, I'm going to keep sharing it. All right. This one was really fun. So if you're not on LinkedIn, you probably want to go get on LinkedIn. I saw some people complaining yesterday about LinkedIn's become more of like a Facebook than it has a business site. And they feel like it's mostly people complaining or trying to sell things. And the guy complaining is a guy that spends his LinkedIn trying to sell you things. And I thought, why are you like, you liked it better when you were the only one in here trying to sell things? And that seems to be the whatever. This is what we call the Restoration Association. So the restoration industry for homeowners. Okay, let me give you some background on why this is funny. It's probably about 10 years ago, several people from the collision repair side, when it's maybe around 2007, 2008, so maybe a little more than that, when we had the recession and everything was, and a lot of people were getting laid off in corporations. So the what we would call the supportive industries, paint companies, rental car agencies, or whatever. There was a lot of layoffs. And all of these people decided that they were going to go over and get into the homeowners restoration business, and specifically the people that go like right after your house is burned, and they're doing the blowers, or they're trying to get the water out, and they're doing blowers, and they're doing mitigation and putting up tarps and all of that. In a way that, I don't want to say it was unregulated, but it was sort of it's kind of like, when a tow truck comes to an accident scene and the car's down in the ravine and the tow bill's $6,000, there's just not a whole lot we can do about it. We have to pay the tow bill. That was sort of like where that was. And as I was starting to walk out of my insurance career, the homeowners division was looking at our automotive side and going, we really got to do better about having like a DRP for contractors and a DRP for these restoration, like mitigation loss people and whatever. So as we started to go through that recession, a lot of people from our side of the industry who had worked with insurance companies because they were vendors, right? They worked with insurance companies, jumped ship and went over to the other side. They were even going to try to do their own version of a conference. So, like how we had the collision industry conference or CIC, they were going to do a version of that for restoration. And everybody was very excited because they're like, this is a blue ocean. Like, there's the insurance companies aren't involved in controlling that side of the business the way they are in Autobody. And this is going to be great. And I was like, way to go run it. Right. Um, well, this guy made a post. I want to say it's Thursday in LinkedIn, and so that's the screenshot of it. You can go see it, go read it, and read the comments more than just the post on there. That was really interesting. But so they're having a problem. So the Restoration Industry Association, so just think of the CIC for homeowners, has a president and a bunch of people, and the people now are very friendly to insurers. In fact, the restoration president said that without insurance, we wouldn't exist. Now, us in the body shop business, we've heard that all the time. People go, well, if there wasn't insurance companies to pay for auto body repairs, customers wouldn't get their cars fixed. So you guys better be nice to us or we're gonna take our money and go. And that makes people feel nervous. And in some ways, the insurance companies are helpful, but people have to replace their tires and people have to replace their engines and people have to do transmission repairs. And so the automotive, mechanical side of the business doesn't do insurance companies like we do, and they're okay. They didn't go out of business, right? There's not a bunch of disposable cars on the side of the road because they broke down and no one's fixing them. So this was really interesting. It made this guy really angry, and he writes this big, almost like manifesto. And I'm reading it going, that's my new best friend, right? Me and this guy got to get to know each other. But I love his line at the first paragraph. We are not claims professionals. We are restorers. So he made some analogies that I found amusing. A wedding planner is in the divorce industry because 50% of couples get divorced. So he's making all these analogies for why restorers aren't in the claims business. A plumber is in the toilet paper industry because sometimes they unclog a toilet. His analogies aren't far off for where we are and how we allowed too many people with insurance tendencies to get involved in things. And whether that was financially, like we took money from sponsors that don't want to make insurance companies mad, or let's say more to the point, they don't want to make MSOs mad. So associations can't say or do the things that they would probably like to do, because if they do, people threaten to remove their funding. There was a presentation, several presentations that have happened at CIC over the years that people march in and go, if you do this presentation, we're taking our money and going elsewhere. Bye, Felicia. That death grip of money, and then that catering to the insurance. And there's still I always tell people CCC is the biggest example of a company that makes billions of dollars catering to insurance companies. So there's a sort of a track record of, if you get insurance companies to mandate your product, then you're good. I got another post that went out on LinkedIn that caught my attention, and I'm running down right now. Sort of the same thing in the OE business. So we got vendors that want to go cater to OEs because they want OEs to mandate their stuff, their training for their certification program. I got a guy that had to send 2 people to dent repair training. The invoice was $19,200, and that was not a hotel and that was not airfare. That was just the cost of training. So I wrote him back and I went, so train 2 plus equipment. He was like, no equipment in that bill. Already owned the equipment. I had to have it for the initial inspection from this OE program. For me to send 2 people for 1 week of training, their charge to me $19,200, and I still had to buy airfares. I had to buy the hotel. I had to buy their food. I had to pay their wages for the 2 weeks while they were gone, because of obviously technicians in flat rate, right? Like they don't travel for training. So there's this, like, once you get somebody to mandate you, then there's this fleecing, so to speak, that kind of happens, and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. But I just thought it was interesting that the homeowner side is struggling with the same thing that we struggle with over here. I'm not so sure how much of it was a natural progression of things on that side of the fence, and how much of it is because we sent a bunch of our people over there in 2007, and it may just now be the results of that. Uh, there's a lot of people that went into the restoration business, that came from companies that had national agreements with insurers, vending services national agreements that may have taken that whole philosophy over there. So I don't know, but if you don't have a LinkedIn account, you might want to go get one and read this one. The comments are great because the people that are on the board for this association, apparently his caricature there at the top is actually realistic caricatures of the board members. I don't know, and so people are very mad at him and calling him immature and unprofessional. Which, of course, then I was like, "Yep, we're friends. Like, this is my new friend." Um, but very interesting take. I have a friend that's in the healthcare industry. She manages a bunch of hospitals and clinics, over 700 of them, and we often talk about the things she's dealing with in the health insurance side, very similar to what we deal with in the Autobody side. So at least when somebody says you're the only one, you can go, not true. People in multiple industries are feeling the same pressures I am. All right, if you didn't know it, the insurance companies continued to post record profits. They sort of righted the ship last year in 2024, and 2025 has been cruising. Just last week, Progressive announced that their July earnings were up with a 34% net, not gross, net. If you could increase your body shop's net by 34% today, wow, would we all be super happy? Well, what I love reading about this is that at the same breath that these reports are coming out, I have insurance adjusters that get on Collision Hub's Facebook page and get on different places and talk about how we're ruining insurance in America by teaching shops to charge total losses or do whatever. And all we're doing is driving premiums up, and we're making it impossible for, you know, shops to, or insurance companies to make money. And I think there's not a lot of shops that listen to me, that do what I tell them to do. If that was the case, you would not have a 34% net. And then we saw Geico posted record profit, and USAA had posted profit. So the insurance companies are doing okay. Well, why does that matter? Well, it also, in the same week, we got a little report here from IAA that came out talking about negative equity. Now there is a deeper study that's got an economist and a bunch of people looking at it, talking about this negative. Well, negative equity happens in total losses. And we've talked about this increasing total loss trend. The statistics right now are high. Like, we're already setting, it's 2025, we're setting at 30%. It was estimated that by the end of 2026, we would be at like 42 to 40, like the numbers changed, 42, sometimes it's been 46% of claims reported claims would be total losses. And back when we started talking about this number, it was 5 years ago. And I think everybody's like, there's no way. But we went from like low 20s in 2017 to 31% now, or in 2023. And now we're continuing to like just ramp up. So, the change, though, has been the way the market sees the value of a vehicle. And that negative equity trend has got economists and insurance companies looking at what's happening with total losses a little bit on a different scale, which you as body shops need to be aware of all of those things. In other words, you're not a claims adjuster, you're not an attorney, you're not an economist, but you need to sort of know what's going on out there. We'll look at this report in a little bit detail. So you can, AAA released this as a press release. You can Google it and go find it yourself. But for Q2 of 2025, the transactions, so in other words, total loss, salvage, settlements, total loss payments, 52% of complex total losses had negative equity transactions. While we also had that going on, we had salvage sort of, the depreciated value of salvage sort of settle out. So in other words, salvage values are still high. And they were kind of going down, but we see a reversing of that in the second quarter. So in other words, Salvage value is remaining steady to increasing. Negative equity transactions are now 52%. So if we just extrapolate from this and we say for 52% of total losses that get settled have a negative equity issue. And then what does that mean and where does it go? So shops ask me all that sort of all the time about these, what we call constructive total losses. In other words, Kristen, this car came in, I wrote an estimate, I wrote a damn good sheet. It was about 30% of the ACV, but the insurance company came in and totaled it out anyway. That can be a couple of different things, right? It could be a high salvage value. Like, I mean, that car, I mean, sometimes a four-wheel drive will have a 40% or more salvage value. So sometimes it's cheaper to total it than it is to repair it. Now, if it's a first-party car, I cannot take into account rental because that's a secondary contractual coverage. In other words, you paid for that. I can't use it against you as a reason for why I'm totaling your car. In a claimant situation, I can think through other payments. Oh, I'd have DB, I'd have loss of use, I'd have whatever. And so therefore, totaling the car is the best financial decision for my customer. But we also have to think about, while you're making those decisions, is it a financial interest to the insurer? And then is it of a financial detriment to the consumer? I can't just total cars because I want to. And we call it revenge totals, right? I can't do those. I can't say, well, I don't like that shop. I don't like anything. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to total everything that goes there and I don't have to deal with them. That I can't do. But where's our negative equity coming from? And just some things for us to sort of look at and what's happening in the market. You're going to get a customer that kind of has these problems. If I look at the average years of total losses, let's just say we're going to go to a 2023 model year, right? In 2023, so that probably would have been 2022 and 2023 when people were buying those cars, the average new loan for a new car was 7.1%. On a used car, the average rate was 11.93%. With those interest rates, you're not getting anywhere on the principal. If we look historically from 2014 all the way to May of 2025, where we are for interest rates, that 2022 was about the lowest we were, and starting in 2020, about the end of 22, interest rates went through the roof. We had that really interesting time in COVID where there wasn't a whole lot of cars available and new cars, and you would sell your used car for more than what you'd bought it for 2 years before new. When we look at sticker prices, in 2023, a Ford F-150 average sticker was anywhere from $35K base to $85K loaded. If I go to the lot now and look at a 25 Ford F-150, the average sticker is $39K to $77K. So cars are somewhat new value less, right? High interest rates on what we bought typically means that I'm going to be upside down when I have a total loss. And if the consumer's in a negative position as an insurer, when I am aware of this, which is why IAA tracks this. I guarantee you, IAA isn't tracking something for their own good. IAA and Copart, they're going to track stuff for the benefit of an insurance company, right? So the reason we track all this is I kind of have to know where the market is and what's going to happen and how that market's tracking for my claims people. And then I have to make sure, like we talked about earlier on complaints, that I'm not doing something stupid that gets us in trouble. In other words, I have to mathematically, convincingly know the car's a total. And I have to be able to explain that mathematically should a Department of Insurance complaint come in as to why I made that decision. Which meant I used to have to train my adjusters to go, hey, that little ding that you get in your estimating system that says you're approaching 65% doesn't take into account options. I mean, like back then it was just like base ACV. You'd get a ding and it would tell you the car was worth 6,000. You'd actually go pull the report and the car was worth like 15,000. So the ding was a warning. It was not a end all and be all. And then we had to think through a lot of things. And then occasionally I'd have an adjuster come to me and go, man, this customer does not want this car. Or I'd even have them come to me and go, I hate the shop. I hate going in there. I hate having to write estimates. I hate having to do supplements with them. I just want to total this car. Well, okay, sit down. Mathematically tell me why it's a total. And they would just look at you and go, I don't want to fix it. No, I get that. I fully support that. And I don't think you're wrong. I don't want to fix it either. Like whatever problems you're thinking you're going to get are going to get greater by the time they get to my desk. So, but mathematically, why is this going to be a total, and making them think through it? because I can't put customers in a negative situation. That being a fiduciary that we talk about, it's my job to think about the consumer's needs more than I think about my needs. And I know that seems or it's not very intuitive, because in the insurance industry, we want to make a profit. And that's true, we do. And that's okay. As you see from Progressive, a 34% net, they're doing okay, right? Like, it's not like somebody's got to come in and save the day for them or help them make money. And I used to tell my adjusters, we're doing okay on the money part, right? Like, we're fine. Your job is to put the customer's needs ahead of your own and make a decision that makes sense for the company. We'll go back and think of a mutual auto insurance company, right? Every decision I make is for the group of policyholders, because the policyholders own the company as a team, right? So I can't spend more on a car than financially makes sense, and I can't spend less on a car than what I owe and put the customer in a bad rate. So as we look at negative equity right now, this increase in total losses is starting to cause a little bit more Department of Insurance complaints and a little bit more claim adjusting knowledge that has to happen. But wait, we don't have that. Remember, we lost critical thinking skills. We lost all of that in claims. Constructive total losses. A large percentage of our increase in total losses right now that we see as we march toward this number are along that lines. They're either the adjuster doesn't quite understand what ACV is and getting a good ACV. The adjuster may improperly, not through malice, but just not knowing, factor things they can't. Like, well, it's going to be in the shop and we'll have to pay 30 days of rental. Okay, that's a contractual coverage. They've paid a premium for that. We can't count rental. Like, so come back to the table now. Or revenge totals. And I see that a lot. I've actually had adjusters tell me out loud, we're going to total everything that goes to the shop because we don't like dealing with them. And I'll write them back and go, well, I don't like that shop either. I mean, particularly sometimes I go like, shit, I don't like Larry either. but we can't total out everything that goes there. I mean, in my entire career, I've had 2 or 3 managers that sort of like rotate around the sun, and they come in and go, I am the smartest person ever. You're so lucky that I get to be the claims manager now. And I have a strategy for how we're going to deal with that shop. Let me guess, you want to total all the cars. like, people have tried that. It's not worked out really well in litigation, and the insurer generally gets slapped really hard for doing that because you penalize the customer when that happens. I may not like a shop. I can't total everything that's there because that's not fair to the customer. The customer should get the same service no matter what shop they go to. That's in theory. That's what we used to always say, even about DRP. You should get the same claim payment no matter where you go, because it's about the car. It's not about where the vehicle's being fixed. But now we're all topsy-turvy in that. So I've seen this uptick of what I like to call revenge totals, whether it's particular shops, particular markets, trying to total out anything that doesn't. If it's an area that has RTA, I've noticed those insurers, or it's an insurer that has RTA in their policy, I've noticed those insurers leaning more heavily towards total because they don't want to deal with the RTA. You can't do that. Like, I know, we always say there's this saying, you can total a car at $1. Sure, if it mathematically makes sense. Like, I have to be able to tell the story of math so that when an investigator from the Department of Insurance comes and sits down at my desk and asks to see my file shows that I made the right decision, that that's the right financial decision for the company. It's the right financial considerations for the customer. Last year, I taught a class on constructive total losses, what they are, what that worksheet used to look like, what that exercise used to look like in claims, talking adjusters through it, some questions that consumers can ask. So if a consumer feels like their car is being totaled and it doesn't have that much damage, what are some questions that you can ask the other person on the other end of the line to sort of show you the math? Like, okay, show me the calculations for how you got here and made this decision. I taught that for my C20, or we have a C20 group. It's a virtual 20 group. We meet every month. Of course, now my members are going to get on there and go tell you that's not true. I've been sort of MIA for a couple of months. There's been lots of legal cases, and I've been traveling and doing trial prep with some people, and I've just been out of pocket. So I've been sort of phoning it in to them. We haven't had live sessions. I've sent them recorded classes, but our C20 group met on this topic and we went through it. So if you are experiencing what you feel is targeted total losses, you feel like things are being totaled out at your shop that really aren't totals, you might benefit from this class. Again, you don't handle claims, you're not an attorney, you can't tell people what they should or shouldn't do, but sometimes it's good to sort of know what the thought process is on the other side so that maybe you can ask better questions and then maybe the consumer can ask better questions. And then obviously if the consumer needs to get an attorney, then retain an attorney, right? But we have a constructive total loss class that's available on the website that you can take. If you have not taken the total loss and documentation class, this class is now part of a bundle also on the website where you get the total loss class, you get the constructive total loss class, and you get the documentation class. Like what things should you have in your file that will help your consumer down the road if the consumer needs to make a complaint or whatever. If we don't do our job right, if we don't document right in the right way, it's almost impossible for a consumer to have a successful complaint. I think the way that we talk to consumers, the way that we sort of just go, especially we're sending you a text message. We don't encourage consumers to document their own case. Like, so they don't know that they should be taking notes and they don't know they should be sending emails or doing a lot of things. So if we don't document our file appropriately, we may weaken or take away a consumer's complete opportunity to advocate for themselves, right? Like we want them to be advocates. We want them to work for a proper repair. But if we don't set them up right, then there's nothing they could do. So if you have started to see this uptick maybe in your market of cars totaling that you don't feel are totals, whether it's for whatever reason you think it is, this may be a helpful class to you. I think constructive total losses, everything sort of cycles in this industry. Like nothing's new. I can't even remember when we went through this phase. And I remember losing a really big lawsuit around total losses in salvage. We lost one in Ohio that was just really nasty. But you kind of have a method and you go, whoop, never doing that again. Right. And then it seems like those people retire and phase out of the company. And then somebody else comes around and goes, hey, I got this great idea. What if we started doing this? And there's not that history anymore for somebody to raise their hand and go, no, 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 you can't do that. I really do miss the boomers and having them around in claims because they had great experiences to share. All right. I want to get an F. I don't want an A in my grading anymore. I'm just going to share this because it's sort of a weekly post that you see online. I'm not sure that anyone really knows the difference between a grade A part and a C part and an F part. I mean, so to speak, right? Everybody keeps posting pictures of the grade A part that got shipped to them. This is a fantastic example. I'm pretty sure it's been sitting in salt water for like 6 years before this was like shipped to the actual body shop. So the shop had all this time. So we're talking about Phoenix Auto Parts. Shop had all this time waiting for this part. Holds up the repair. This part comes in. It's non-usable. Now they got to ship it back. Now the insurer is not going to go, well, yep, sorry, we don't want to hold you up anymore. Here, how about you go get an OEM? The insurer is going to ask them to get different used parts. And then we're going to play this game where we just keep delaying things over and over and over. I think it's time that our there never seems to be a way. It's sort of a self-regulated, it's up to you to grade your parts, right? And put them up there. There's not really a good complaint method for where, I would think after I get 2 or 3 parts, like this organization, not the same shop, but if there are 3 shops in this market and this same organization sends 3 bad parts to 3 different shops, they should be taken off the list of available vendors. So the insurers shouldn't see them anymore to be able to put their parts on the estimates, and the repairers shouldn't see them anymore. We have example after example. One guy posted the other day that there was a part sourced on an estimate. I believe it was an Allstate estimate, and the address for the part supplier was Anywhere USA. Like, just complete fake. We've had other ones where we've shared them in past episodes where it's a field where it's listed as the address and we actually look it up on Google Maps and it's a field. There's nothing there. It feels like fake parts supply. Pete, how did this all get into the database and who's screening it? Like I remember 20 years ago, when I would have to go to Chicago and meet with the CCC people, and we would go through the different divisions. I remember meeting, and I'm trying to remember her name, but she was over used parts and the database for it. And I felt like during that time and meeting with her that she was very detailed into like who got on and being able to see those vendors and those vendors having certain criteria and whatever. And now it just feels like the whole database is flooded with a lot of maybe AI fakes. Some of the vendors that are obviously these are real vendors, but the parts are just terrible. Like, I'm I'm not going to install them. If you make a business decision or a customer wants to, I mean, I've got a 99 Chevy down there in my garage, and when I need parts for it right now, I go online. I go to carpart.com and I kind of search everywhere to see if I can find the parts, right? It's a 99 Chevy. But for modern collision repair and cycle times and all of these things, it seems like we'll wait 5-6 days and burn 5 days of $40 a day rental to save $50 on a part for no reason whatsoever, other than because we have a KPI that says I need to have parts. And it's not new. When I was a DRP director in my shop, she used to say all this stuff to me and I go, get it. Yep, totally agree with you. Let's figure out a way to make it work, right? Like, because nobody cares whether you made the right decision. They're just going to look at your numbers at the end of the year and go, ooh, your KPI for alternative parts isn't good enough, or your repair to replace isn't good enough, or whatever. And they're not going to have really specific examples of somewhere you messed up. They're just going to say this report isn't in line with other people's numbers. And as we started to manage this industry by KPIs, this is where we're at. There's no logic, there's no common sense, there's no reason, there's no accounting for the big picture. We just keep pushing garbage, which then means suppliers keep pushing garbage just so they can be on the list and get a couple parts quoted here and there. And hopefully some shops so desperate they keep something. Or how many shops actually install this crap? This is what like blows my mind, because when I talk to different people in the end, they're like, well, Kristen, we just don't get that many complaints. How do you not get that many complaints? Like, I don't understand how you don't get them. And is it not, if their shops actually installing this? And then probably, yeah, when I look at some of the post-repair inspections, I think so. But we need to demand better in this industry, that there is some regulation and policing of alternative parts vendors. It seems to have gotten out of control. The empty fields, we had one that we looked up the address, and it's I don't want to say gas station's not the word, but it's like a small grocery store in the middle of like downtown California, like a big city in California. It's like a grocery store. And I'm like, that's not a parts store. Why the heck is this listed as a parts store? So it's time. Whoever is in charge of that, we're just going to keep sharing some of these things, keep tracking them. As a shop, you need to screenshot this stuff and keep it on your own. That way, when you're having to explain to customers delays and what could happen and whatever, that you've got some good visual examples for them to look at. And it's not a he said, she said, where the adjuster's like, we just don't have any problem with these parts. All right, let's talk about what's on the shelf, and then we'll get you going on your Monday. Hopefully you guys will all have an amazing week. What's on the shelf? We're just going to talk about my books. I love this book. It's called The Wisdom of Psychopaths. Everyone should read it. What saints, spies, and serial killers can teach us about success. Fantastic book. I think it's like $7 or something on Amazon, but it's one of my favorites. It's an older one, but definitely a must read. I'm going to keep talking about it. I'll probably talk about it next month too. I recently had a situation come up for a court case. And in the course of reading somebody's deposition that was sent to me, I thought, I got to go pull this book, right? Like there's something that's tickling the back of my brain. And so I was able to pull it out. I wrote some responding questions and some things based off of it. And it reminded me, that book is so good. So everybody should read it. I really wish that everybody would commit to a book a quarter, It would be nice if you could do a book a month, but if you could do a book a quarter, that would be great. And that doesn't mean you always have to sit down and read them. But if you have a commute to and from your office, even if it's a 15 or a 20-minute drive a day, get a book on tape. And that may be part of we talked about what your unplugging routine is going to be like. So how do I disconnect from the office from the time I leave to the time I pull into my driveway? How do I put it away? How do I let it down? Well, whatever your ritual is going to be, maybe it's listening to a book on tape, something that just changes your perspective or changes your mood, or maybe it's just opera. I don't know. Or or something, but yeah. All right. Well, that's it for the week. Hopefully you will have a fantastic week. I am going to enjoy being a great aunt and I'm getting all the baby time. And it is the official kickoff of high school football, real football that counts on your schedule this week. So, and real college football is back this week as well. So I'm just going to be in football happy land because I have missed it so much. If you need me, well, don't reach out to me because I am almost impossible to get a hold of. But you can get Melanie and Holly. You can just Melanie at collisionhub.com or Holly at collisionhub.com. Just shoot them an email. If you need to talk to me, they control my calendar. They don't let me book appointments on my own calendar anymore because I tend to make really big mistakes and overbook things. But if you need to talk to me, reach out to them and they will put you on the calendar and we'll have a conversation. And sometimes even if you just want to call me and complain together or reminisce or do whatever, I would love those too. Everybody have a fantastic week and I'll see you next Monday morning on Collision Coffee Talk.